Hello, everyone, and welcome to Spooky Scary Saturdays, creepy Appalachian stories and superstitions presented by Perry County Public Library's Children's Youth Services Librarian Jessica Chandler. Hi, everybody. Are you ready to hear a story? Because I'm ready to tell a story. You might be thinking, what's a superstition? Well, it's a song, but it's also a word, and it means excessively credulous belief in and reverence for supernatural beings. He dismissed the ghost stories as mere superstition. And we here in Appalachia have a few superstitions of our own that you may have heard of was never close a knife you didn't open, or you'll have 7 years of bad luck. So anytime that your papa hands you his knife, be sure to hand it back to him open, handle side toward him. Let's not get ourselves cut because we don't want to have bad luck for 7 years. Another one is don't rock an empty rocking chair, for it's a harbinger of death. You don't want to rock that rocking chair without someone being in it. Another nice superstition that you may have heard is when a person dies in a home, open a door for his or her spirit to pass. You don't want to trap that spirit in the house with you. Ooh. I want to read a little tidbit from Kentucky Folklore by R. Gerald Alvey. And this is part of our collection here at the Perry County Public Library. It is Kentucky author, and you can find this in our nonfiction section under 398.09769 ALVE. This book has different things in it. It's Kentucky folklore. So we've got folk speech, proverbs and other expressions, riddles and puzzles, folk rhymes, customs, beliefs, and superstitions, folk songs, and on page 55, folk tales. Probably the most popular kind of folk tale in Kentucky is the joke. And here is a good example of a widespread joke. Once there was this lazy man a lying on the river bank a fishing. His pole was stuck in the bank so he wouldn't have to hold it. Along comes a preacher. The preacher sees there's a fish just a tugging at the line, and the preacher says, "Hey, you got a fish." Well, the lazy man asked the preacher to haul the fish in and put some new bait on the hook. Well, the preacher does that and says, "You're so lazy, I bet your wife don't like you being lazy." Lazy man says he ain't married. Preacher says, "Well, maybe you ought to get married. It'd probably stop you from being so lazy." And the lazy man says, "Well, maybe I orta. How about you finding me a woman to marry me up with?" Preacher says, "Well, I believe I can." Lazy man says, "Could you get me could you get me one come Sunday?" Often the person telling this joke will end it by saying, "Now that's a lazy man." This is a Kentucky favorite. While it's funny, the joke also teaches, like all folklore, the joke shows that we do not admire lazy people, we make fun of them. Kentuckians also tell a lot of local legends, such as a story about the town character, a bad accident, or murder, or any unusual event. For instance, there are stories all around Russellville about the time Jesse James was supposed to have robbed the bank there. Supposedly, Jesse's bullet hole is still in the bank wall. That's the way I heard it, anyways. Nearly all local people know a version of such folk tales, or they know at least part of the story. Some of these local legends can be gruesome. Now, be warned, this is spooky. Boo! Back years ago, a woman had a bad car wreck out on the highway. She was pronounced dead at the scene, and no one knew who she was. She didn't have no ID on her. They went on and buried her in the public graveyard. What they didn't know was that she wasn't dead. She was just in a deep coma and couldn't move or talk or anything. And after a while, they found out who she was, and her people came back to take her and bury her in the family graveyard. When they'd opened up the coffin, there were scratches all over the inside where she'd come out of the coma and tried to get out. Her fingers had also been eaten clean off. She tried to stay alive by eating her own fingers. Ooh, now that's creepy. Many people fear being buried alive. Stories like this let us release those fears through the story. The story also shows the strong human will to live even when buried alive. Another local legend teaches a different lesson. Back a long time ago, there was this man sitting with a sick man. They started drinking shine and even got the sick man some. The man fell asleep, and it pepped up the sick man, and he got up and went outside. When the others woke up, they started hunting for him and found him down by the road, passed out. He was too big to carry. He was too big to carry, so they drug him back home. And when they got him home, they saw something awful. They had drugged the sick man's heels off. The next morning, they told his family that the rats had got on his bed and ate his heels off. Here we learn of the evils of drunkenness and failure to do our duty. Many folk tales have similar truths in them. And that is an excerpt from Kentucky Folklore by R. Gerald Alvey, which you can find in our stacks in our nonfiction, which is a Kentucky author, 398.09769 ALVE. Another superstition that I've heard and have witnessed myself is that death comes in threes. Another lighter one that we've heard is don't let anyone sweep under your feet or you'll never marry. Here's one that I really enjoy. At the stroke of midnight on Halloween, a lighted candle will reveal the future in the mirror's reflection. Look above your left shoulder. Mwahaha.